All right, so welcome back to the studio, everybody. Up on my computer here, you can see I've got a picture of Jeremy Clarkson on the original Toybota, which is a Toyota Hilux, an older one, with a giant boat outboard motor on the back. The reason I'm showing this picture, of course, is for those of you just joining me, I'm actually doing a tribute build to the Toybota, and they actually did two different versions of this, of course, one being the Toyota Hilux, and then the other one being a Nissan or wherever you are in the world and however you pronounce it. And I'm actually, the tribute itself that I'm doing is right here. Now, I've just been mucking about a little bit here, and those who have been following along will see that this looks terrible. But I've been doing this on my own, just in a mock-up style, to see how much flotation I actually needed on the truck. And I'm going to show you a few other things that I was struggling with, but I think I've gotten past the issue. Now, obviously, messing around with the flotation, these pieces of styrofoam on the bottom do not look very good. They're just a standard pool noodle. Now, for Jeremy, in his second version, he actually had those big oil barrels on the outside of the truck for stability. I've been studying the episodes over and over again for quite some time. Here's the thing I noticed about the skid plate once I put these pieces of pool noodle under here. And for those that haven't watched the whole show or seen the other two episodes, one where I made this whole giant skid plate and the other one where this whole cab and section is actually filled with this pool noodle film and then, foam, and then just taped into place with waterproof tape to help give this flotation. I just need it to float just above this line right here to be a replica of the one Jeremy has. Now, there are other questions of how am I going to attach the back motor, the whole deal, because I have to keep this a solid box, and I'll tell you, I put a lot of time and thought into it. But first, let's go down to the water, and even though this looks kind of ugly, I want you guys to have a look at the difference that this actually has by just adding this piece right here without the oil barrels. Back to the gate.
Okay, so here at the water, in episode 1, I actually already did a flotation test. That was just with the foam inside the cab, and yeah, I know it's ugly, but I'm just mocking it up for now to see how this actually changes. And if you remember, the way this is supposed to float, the outboard motor on the back should actually tip the truck in a little bit to see if that front skid plate's gonna work. But check this out. Okay, completely floating. But what's crazy about that is that it's floating in perfectly level, which is awesome. I'm happy to have it floating like that. Okay, so this rock generally represents the weight of the outboard motor, and that's not too bad. It's actually just at the wake level there. I still want to have enough flotation that when this goes underwater or gets water in it, it's still going to stay above. But one of the problems I'm noticing right now, that may be a problem, I don't know, we'll find out as we go, is the skid plate needs to lift itself out of the water to start pushing that water if it's going to work properly. And I may not have made it long enough, so I wonder if it's going to be a hindrance. Or maybe not, maybe even if it was underneath, as long as I had shaped it properly, maybe not like in this square pattern, but kind of round it off, it would still work. Anyway, so back to the drawing board, still got to put that outboard motor together, and I have devised a way to fit it on the back, which was one of my more difficult things I had to figure out. But there you go, completely floating truck. And we're going to have independent steering for the outboard motor, so the tires on the front will not have anything to do with that.
Okay, so what have I learned basically from that? And overall, what I've learned is I wonder if I'm going to have to worry about water coming over the front of this skid plate, when in fact it was supposed to be more of a bow. But in Jeremy's build, when we get a chance to see it flipped over in the lake, you can actually see that their skid plate basically only came up to the bumper anyway. So it was kind of flush with the bumper, and the grill itself was the bow. So I still may do that and just kind of round off these edges right here if it becomes a problem. The other thing was, what else did I learn? Was the amount of foam that I have here seems to be ample for at least lifting the vehicle out. And what I was going to use on the back, and I still may, is some of this foam board for underneath the body and the chassis in this area. But in Jeremy Clarkson style, for those that can see this size of outboard motor on the back of the Toyota there, I was able to source that stiletto outboard motor from ProBoat. Now this thing is a giant. If you guys saw in my last episode, I actually held up my iPhone 7 Plus beside it. Here is a nice beverage of choice, but it is enormous. So that is what actually led me to my next issue, because I've been wondering about when I build this motor, the whole internal electrics of it. It is electric. I want to state that right away. I'm going to be wanting to put it on the back. Now, just like they have it on their Toybota, the issue I'm having, of course, and if you can tell, and I'll turn it like this so you can see, is that it needs the ability to lift and be out of the way, because the rudder on this is too low. If I was entering the water at a reversed angle, basically going down, and then I start to flatten out, I'd start to drag this rudder. The other thing is that if I lifted it up too much, let me put it right here, if I lift it up too much and say put a brace on it right there, the prop I don't think is far enough in the water from the way it's floating. It's just barely in there. So I've had to devise a way to mount this up. Now, like I was saying, this skid plate underneath here was a piece of my skid plate from my full-size Polaris Razor, just the stock one when I had it replaced. Now, I went out scratching my head trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do. How could I actually make this work with what I had? I think you'll like this. I hope. We'll see. I didn't want to put a hole in this because I've already sealed up the whole box except for the one hole where the antenna was supposed to go, even though I'm going to run it on the outside of the box now to prevent any water, extra water from entering here. So it was either that I ran it servo driven and I could bring the engine up like this and down like this on a servo, which is great. But a lot of folks don't think that, of course, it's going to need a servo to go left and right as well. Independent steering from the wheels up front. I don't want to have these wheels moving as a forward rudder when this one is trying to do the job. So I had to figure out, okay, I'm going to do this manually. How am I going to put it in manually? And I thought about doing some sort of door hinge or whatever. But even if I did that, it was still going to not have enough resistance there. So it was bugging me. And so I went outside and I started looking around. I still had pieces of the skid plate that I could mount and mold, which is what you see right here. This is actually a bracket off of a work tool shelf. Here, look at this inside bracket. So then I took the extra pieces of skid plate I had and chopped them down, smoothed them down, and heated and bent it after I mounted up this door hinge. Now, with this being on a spring, this is perfect. There's only one thing I need to do here, and I want to put it on a limiter. So right about there is as high as it will go, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in a moment. Now, notice how I form fitted it. Or fitted, what the heck is that? Form fitted this to the actual tail, and this will all make more sense in a moment here. Right here on the tailgate itself. It fits nice and flush, smooth, it's got a good perch point. Also, I'm running the back depth of the box bed itself. I'm going to put in a couple of bolts, probably 3 of them here, and then that way none of the Toyota name is ruined, and I'm able to get the motor out of the water, or out of the water and up out of the way of any road, or you know, trail, whatever we're on. The silliness is I think it's big enough to look exactly as large as the one on Jeremy's Toyota itself. So anyway, so there you go. That took a long time for me to come up with, even though it is such a simple idea. But really just using what you have, as I've always shown, can sometimes be the best way just to fabricate what you need, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. All right, so on the outboard motor, I'm just removing the screws so we can access the parts I have inside. There we are. Tubing comes with the motor mount and the shaft adapter right there. Okay, so the motor I'm using, here you go, is a brushless motor, a 2000 kV high torque 4-pole design. It is 6.6 ounces or 184 grams in weight. Already comes pre-soldered with the 4mm posts on the end, right here and right here. This is ready for the receiving ESC, which you're gonna need about a 30 amp ESC just to run this. A waterproof brushless one, of course, which means if you guys hadn't thought of that, I'm actually going to need 2 ESCs to run this whole truck, and they're going to have to run separate. So that'll be fun for me to wire up. I will be switching my radio, of course, over to a dual stick radio, one where I have it just basically set up on the left side for the truck to be run, and then of course for the outboard motor. I think that's the way I'm going to go. We'll see. Ta-da! So I made sure that the mount was on properly, so the pre-sunk screws fit in right. I made sure to use blue thread lock on everything, including the grub screw right here for the flex shaft adapter. Okay, so there it is, all mounted up. I also have already installed part of the water cooling system, which is really just that tube right there. As this outboard motor goes through the water, it'll be picking up water through the inlet tube here, carrying it along the spine up through a small, what looks to be like a brass tube. And then of course I put this rubber tubing as an extension to the water jacket. What happens here is all this water being forced into the jacket takes the heat of the motor and expels it through another tube right here, which will just spit out the back of the motor wherever I put the outlet tube. So that's how that motor is staying nice and cool. But basically the back of the outboard motor goes on like this. I still have to get the ESC I want to use. And where is my screwdriver? Right here. And just for glamour's sake, I'll throw on a prop. So now I can feel the resistance of the motor, because on the inside the motor is turning as I turn the prop shaft. And now it's a matter of, I guess, pre-mounting it to see exactly how this will fit. Now I'm just putting in an extra flathead screw for support against the back. I think it's a good idea just to have a little bit of extra oomph there. Extra bite, eh? That means it's extra strong. So, good. Now if I put a limiter on it, probably about there, even if it was just a piece of foam, I could stop that. Okay, so new mounting plate, just need an extra nut right there. Perfect. Now, let's line it up and drill the holes for the motor. Man, that is ludicrously high in the air, and a ludicrously large motor for the back of the Toybota. Check it out. This is Jeremy Clarkson worthy. You can see the weight now on the back, hence why I had it supported against the back tailgate. But now you'll see with the weight of the motor on the back, I'm sure we're gonna see the front of this truck lift. And I will have to change almost everything. In fact, I bet you we still have to use a foam block underneath here just to get the proper flotation. But to wrap up today's video, I don't have the steering installed, but I definitely now have a way to get the motor out of the way, for at least for clearance wise, if we're trailing. Does it look absolutely silly and preposterous? Of course it does. But having a Land Cruiser that is also a boat, not so preposterous unless you put a giant outboard motor on the back. So without any further chit chat, let's go outside. Let's see how the flotation has been affected now and to see how bad this end actually sinks down. Because I still have to add an ESC and another battery just to run this one. So there will be some more weight coming.
I'll tell you, this walk is only a few acres long, but when you do it a few times a day, it becomes quite the distance. Okay, it's prediction time. Will it float or will it sink? I'm gonna put it in deep enough to do either or. Let's see here. Oh! Now I do have water coming in quickly through the back where the hole is not sealed properly, but check it out, it's totally floating. Now I will need that buoyancy in the back underneath the bed for sure. But you know what? The prop is in the water. The nose of the boat is floating, though it's not floating as high as I'd like it. Look at this. The bow still is there, and it could take on quite a bit of water from the back, but with those 2 barrels I should have, or at least 2 more pieces of swimming noodle, right, to act as the oil barrels on the side, should give me quite a bit of buoyancy back there. And I think we actually are well on our way to building a replica Toybota. Guys, thanks a lot for tuning in today. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know the routine. Share the video, get it seen. We're almost at 1 billion views, and we'll see you in the next episode of RC Adventures. Now get outside and have fun with the hobby of RC. Bye.